This is not a recipe for boiling Englishmen, though you may in the course of this video pick up some useful tips that will serve you well in such culinary pursuits. Kashige Yabushige, after all, does fancy the practice. Not because wayward English sailors are a staple of local cuisine, but rather the man yens for all things death. Yabushige is obsessed with mortal ends, that of others and perhaps his own. Now, I was lost of this sordid murk, committed to a life in the professional realm, not delving into asides about alien foes and frigates anymore. But then, Shogun arrived, a series based on the old chap James Clavell's classic tome about an irascible English sailor, Major Johnny Blackthorne, who, along with his crew, shipwrecks on the shores of the Japans in the early 17th century, and quickly finds himself flung amidst the throes of an epic dynastic war. Specifically, Major Blackthorne finds himself marooned in Izu province, where he is brought before the region's brutish lord, our friend Yabushige, who must delicately spraddle the powerful parties seeking to achieve political dominance over Japan. Yoshi Toranaga, one of the two major players amidst the conflict, is Yabushige's lord, and thus the man to whom Yabushige owes his ultimate fealty. As the series climaxes, spoiler alert, Yabushige betrays Toranaga, choosing to aid Toranaga's chief rival Ishido Kusanari in his plot to assassinate the fine lady Mariko for her defiance and, by extension, threat to his rule. And alas, we have our rub. For as Johnny Blackthorne is swept into the Japans on the whims of a capricious tide, so here am I too swept again into this godforsaken hellscape, better known as the internets, so that I may issue a sufficient defense of my good man, Yabu, and help him reclaim his good, or at least semi-decent name. Returning to my opening salvo, Yabu is so tickled by the notion of death and how man may embark unto it that the morning after he so blithely brewed a behemothian kettle of English tea for the sake of science, he makes no recounting of his prior night's cuckolding in the care of renowned courtesan Kiku, and instead remains hopelessly adrift, footling about in the haunt of the sailor's ghastly demise. And then, how proper of Yabushige in this moment to order that his retainer make foray into the sentimental. It's at this point we must inquire of ourselves. Are we looking here at a wretched man? Is Yabushige an irreparably deranged fiend, or is there more to him than meets the eye? Is there more to him than his sadistic methods of dispatching captive foreigners? Aye, the latter. Yes, prima facie, Yabushige seems a dastardly lord, but a peek deeper reveals an awfully simple man who wants only to maintain his domain in peace, give or take a few hectares, but is wedged between the wills of two rival men, Toranaga and Ishido, who are vying for power over Japan, both who seek to use Yabushige to advance their own megalomaniacal ambitions. Upon first encountering Yabushige, it is, to be fair, quite easy to infer his behavior as being indicative of low character. He's a brutish Philistine. He's given to histrionics. And though in a position of relative feudal power, he's not a man who inspires the masses or rouses men to fight through the employment of oratorical eloquence.
してよみよ。南蛮船の件を虎中に密告しよった不届き者は見つかったか。
まだ見つかっておりません。
今まで何をしておったのじゃ。小袖にこうでも抱きしめておったのか。
He's a bully who inspires his retainers and army to action through brute force and some bit of mockery. Of course, he's also a killer. A man willing to do the dirty deed so to secure his lofty standing among the kingdom's high arbiters. Yabu has also cultivated a reputation that speaks of untrustworthiness. Toranaga himself constantly suspects him of duplicity.
その方はわしにとって頼もしき味方ではなかったかの。それとも石堂殿に毒されてしまうたかの。
Yabu is a schemer, albeit not one of Machiavellian heights or intellect. Rather, his double dealing is obvious to everyone with even a whisper of pulse.
恐れながら万人の船のことは虎長様にお伝えいたさぬのでございます。
虎長様は大坂に囚われておられる。
And yet, here I am to exonerate him from aspersion. Why? Well, I hypothesize that there's a singular reason to his rich duplicity. Survival. See, Yabushige may be a brave man, but he does not covet death. On the contrary, he fears it, and certainly dreads an unimaginative one. Don't get me wrong. He's primed to release the confinements of his innards on a mere impulse should fate command it. He is samurai, after all. However, this moment has less to do with Yabu specifically, and more to do with the greater moral complexity true of samurai culture that Shogun so artfully explores. Alas, that's for another video. But while Yabu faces death with elan and panache, we must still confront the fact that throughout the climax of the series, he is beset by anxiety due to the dangers which encroach upon him as he ventures into Ishido's vicinity.
一体どういうおつもりであんなことをなさったのじゃ。正気の沙汰とは思えん。何かに取り憑かれでもいたしたか。お気は確かか。
This isn't a man who frets not his mortality. He is inured to death's imagery, for in his line of work, the grisly end is always proximate, and given the echelons of power to which he answers directly, it'll surely come for him before long, and he thus ever wonders how it will feel to succumb. He'd really rather hold off on such discovery, though, and that, my friends, is why he works the proverbial room. 'Tis here that I must suggest you review the series. Yabu rarely has options. He is but a pawn in Ishido and Toranaga's political game.
石堂様なら必ずやお分かりくださるはずやが、わしは虎長に忠義立てをせねばならぬ立場。ご主君に伝えてくれ。必ず約束を果たすと。
As soon as Ishido comes into conflict with Toranaga, Yabu's influential position in Toranaga's feudal ranks necessitates that he is exploitable by both men. If I recall correctly, it is Ishido who first impresses upon Yabushige to assist with his designs on power against the interests of Toranaga, as the two concoct a plan to wrest Blackthorn from the breast of the executioner, so to use him for Ishido's gain.
それにしてもお主を城に招かぬとは、虎長公も礼儀を知らぬようじゃの。あいにご招きには預かっておりませんな。お主がなぜあの箕輪の末裔に忠義を尽くすのか合点がいかぬ。
What is Yabu to do here? Spurn Ishido? Accost him for his indecent proposal and whisk him to the door, wishing aloud along the way that it doth not strike him a rear as he exits? I assure you that would not end well for our man. Although I suppose I can actually answer the question posed. What should Yabushige do in response to Ishido subtly requesting that he betray Toranaga? Of course, he should refuse. He should invite Ishido's hostility upon him, and death with those winds should such result due to his refusal to deceive the man he serves. See, in feudal Japan, a man's fate is not his own. A single man's life is of no material matter, lest he should count himself among the most elite of the kingdom's uncommoners. What is essential, however, is that a man serves his master with honor. See, most men contemporary of Yabushige would acquiesce to the burdens of duty and accept fate as it comes. Yabushige does not. He instead attempts to placate all men of power who seek his fealty, and in doing so asks upon himself charges of disloyalty.
どのような褒美をちらつかせたのじゃ。
虎長様の代わりに大老にしてやると。
その気になったか。
めっそうもございませぬ。
Yabu appears authentic here and adamantly denying that he has eyes for a seat on the Council of Regents in Toranaga's stead. I assume he accepts Ishido's offer not for the grand power to be lavished upon him, but simply because doing so pleases that tyrannous creep. Just say yes is Yabushige's mentality. And should doing so afford him station in life beyond what he even desired, fantastisch. The truth is, Yabu isn't that ambitious. He just wants his land, his damn fief, give or take a few plots.
力ば。その方は何が望みじゃ。
駿河の国にございまする。領地を広げとうござる。
His duplicity is mutinous in flavor, but not necessarily towards any specific individual. No, any deceit Yabu engages in represents a rebellion against the rigid society he is beholden to, one which demands he devalue his own good for the sake of the state. Thus, one moment he's assuring Ishido's men of his undying allegiance.
何もかも誤解でござる。
断ると申すか。
それがしを殺せば石堂様は得難い味方を失うことになるぞ。
されば心は決まっておるとな。
And the next, he avers himself the steadfast devotee of Toranaga till death do him part from his earthly coil and perhaps beyond.
お父上を裏切るなどと疑われただけでも不愉快千万。拙者はお父上のためなら命も捨てる覚悟でござる。
This isn't exemplary of any fraudulence of heart, though. Yabu is doing what we like to call difficult personality management. I'm sure those of you who boast employment can relate, given the witless suits who overrule you. Pardon the crass nature of the words to ensue, but my friends, bullshitting is not ideal, but it will keep you alive. That's what Yabushige is all about. He desires none of the bloodshed his masters seek.
我が軍勢は壊滅状態。いつ負け戦に引っ張り出されるか分からんという時に、お前という男は万人一人にいつまでもこだわりよって。
Put plainly, my guy wants what any man wants: peace, a fief, and an honorable death. Yabu isn't a lord of war, he's a warlord of words.
もとよりこの船は召し上げるまでもなく虎長様のもの。不意にお送りして驚かせて差し上げようと思ったまでのことでございます。
And he mostly keeps sword to sheath and attempts to thwart brewing conflict in his midst with repartee and, at times, a laugh. Although there is still that climactic treachery to revisit, in which, no longer wishful of sustaining that strenuous equilibrium he has for so long between his loyalty to one ruling party and another, he turns on Toranaga permitting Ishido's assassins to breach the castle walls in Osaka and kill Mariko. So does such action make him an iniquitous deceiver? I say nay, for once again his options are but one, should we exclude those which convey him precipitously to the heavens. You'll recall the scene when Ishido's man tenders Yabu the offer, granting him the requested place in his coalition, should he only assist in his diabolical plot to fell Mariko. Yabu's visage rather clearly spells detest upon recognizing that Ishido's proposal includes an expectedly unpleasant condition.
石戸様にお仕えする仮に死を免じてもらいたいとの申しでしかと承ったと。されど一つ条件があると。
Once more I ask, what is Yabu to do here? Toranaga has ostensibly surrendered, and Ishido has already rejected Yabushige's straightforward offer of allyship. In the shorthand, this means, Yabu, death for thee is nigh, and Mariko too shall soon suffer ends. I think that Yabu always presumed that his unenviable position among Japan's political arena, one that pits him betwixt two epical samurai lords in contest with each other, was going to back him into this troublous moment when he must make a fateful choice that will permanently resolve the direction of his loyalty. Refusing to betray Toranaga here and embrace Ishido is tantamount to suicide. Yabu knows that he is doomed here regardless. He doesn't trust Ishido, but at least if he takes the deal cast his way, he gains a few extra days to devise a way out of the muss. In the immediacy following Mariko's death, Yabushige appears racked with guilt for what part he played in effectuating it, and is sinking into madness apace. His hand has been forced by Ishido, and yet he lives with the burden of the deed. Perhaps, too, his madness is made by that he has finally been beaten, and he will die without willing how. He had a good run, chicanery, sharp wit, sailor's stew and all, but he cannot escape the beckon of death any longer. Yabu thus comes before Toranaga, who orders that he commit seppuku for the betrayal committed.
いたしました。
よかろう。そちの所領はすべて召し上げ、明日の日没までに腹を切ってもらおう。
Toranaga seems to be merciless and without understanding of Yabu's calamitous plight. But notice, Yabushige does not argue with the unfairness of it all. Why? Because both men do not even consider fairness. This is the way it goes for the meager individual in feudal Japan. One's life is not his own. The individual good is scant recognized. Toranaga does not want Yabu to die. He would spare him should fate agree 'tis a right course of action. But alas, fate has made up its mind, and both men well fathom this fact of immutability. As well, there's a sort of tragic, albeit macabre side given to the broader gloom of this moment. When Toranaga commands that Yabu slit his belly, Yabu doesn't refuse suicide altogether, but rather he begs his master to allow him a more fantastical death.
殿、どのみち殺すのであればよき死をお与えくださる。王術に好みが切り裂かれるような、怒り狂った魚の群れに生きたまま食われるような。
That which he so long longed for in his sweetest imaginings. And yet, a humdrum demise, a routine seppuku, will make his end. Toranaga here denies Yabushige his dreams. For it is not one man's dreams that ever matter. Thus, Yabushige goes about his mortal unraveling in the company of his old conversant and lord, Toranaga. He accepts his fate in placid state, soberly wending through a final discourse alongside the man who wields his destiny.
一体どのような心地がするものでございましょうか。 殿は全ての風を己の欲しいままに操っておられる。
わしは風を操ったりはせぬ。読むだけじゃ。
Yabushige is not a man lost of fear. He does not particularly want to die, but he possesses a fortitude of character that allows him to force his self to high comportment, and thereby overcome a manifestation of his fears. So, f it. I'm a dead man. Let's not make this a laborious affair. Have then my bowels, wicked world. Kashige Yabushige is from first breath, and perhaps even prior, for that is the nature of fate, a doomed man. A cursory glance at the sum of his actions following Major John Blackthorne's landmake in the Japans has led many to deem him a duplicitous actor, an uncouth interlocutor whose loyalties turn with a change in the wind. The truth, however, is more complicated. Unwavering loyalty will quickly end a man in feudal Japan, and Yabu well knows this. Compared to those who stand unfalteringly servile by their masters, you know, men who die quickly, Yabu falls short in principle. But he does not fall first, and that is no trifling aside, though his persistence in life does cast him as an unsympathetic character. Remember him, shall we, for his two-timing antics, but too should we assess his motivations for such deceit, and as well recall that he was but a pawn of greater men, and would have been content to remain at peace in the Japans. My friend, I know what you are thinking. Did he do this whole video just so he could say, the Japans? Perhaps, perhaps not. In any case, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future updates, looks into the souls of men. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films. Peace.